We talk a lot about the decentralization of the currency prevents it from being killed by a government.
Yep.
Do you think that some of Wall Street's tactics can kill Bitcoin?
Well, I think they can rehypothecate it. I put out a piece yesterday, the R and C words, rehypothecation and commingling. Excuse me, those are dirty words. But that is how Wall Street makes its money. And what's fascinating, this is kind of an inside baseball. You're a financial guy. This is kind of an inside baseball piece. And I would have thought that it wouldn't have gotten much play, but it was already probably about 20 hours after putting it up, it's already had more than 6,000 views.
Wow.
So a lot of people are wanting to learn. They understand that there's something here. And I don't mean to be the bearer of the news. Some folks have wanted to shoot the messenger, but I stood up the moment that ICE came out and announced it and said, this is not good for the price of Bitcoin. Look at what's happened since then. It's had about a 20% correction. A lot of folks said, a lot of folks expected this to be a huge positive, right? And I'm so sympathetic and feel the same myself. Empathetic, probably a better word, about wanting to have the mainstream acceptance that we've all been craving. This is validation that we have something really special here, and we're no longer these sort of, kids off in the corner playing with their, fancy tech toy. We're being taken seriously, and there's so much positive to take away from that. But it is a double-edged sword, and I do believe that it has suppressed the price. And the reason is because now it's hard to say everything that has suppressed the price, but Absolutely. If you look at it that day, it's pretty clear that ICE news actually. There was a lot of selling in Bitcoin that day, and that was the only news that particular day. It was a week ago Friday.
Absolutely. What if you're sitting there and you're running a Wall Street bank today, right? You're Diamond or whoever, right? And you see this asset class emerge, start to grow,
yep.
And you say, I'm willing to sacrifice my short-term profits for long-term sustainability with this as a mainstream asset class. What do you do? Right. What would you do as the head of that Wall Street bank?
Well, I think you do what Goldman does, and I've multiple times written that Goldman was the one that among the banks that was different. When I and my colleagues at Morgan Stanley were going to meetups clandestinely on after hours and on weekends in 2014, trying to keep our heads down and not reveal to the world that who we worked for, and not to reveal our interest internally either, and our day job. Goldman folks were the ones that didn't feel that. There was an acceptance, a cultural acceptance within Goldman of accepting curiosity and accepting wanting to branch out and think outside the box. And the other investment banks all seemed to ratchet that down. And I just was chatting with somebody who's working at another investment bank literally yesterday. And he said, the compliance department is still, these things are so risky, and it's dark web, and no one, you can't verify who, the counterparty on the other side, and very negative still. So I think a lot of the banks are still being, run by their compliance departments in that regard, but they're missing out. So why am I singling out Goldman? Goldman is, they're putting together a crypto trading desk. Lloyd Blankfein was at the time, the CEO, one of the only CEOs, one of the only Wall Street titans who actually came out and said positive things about Bitcoin, and said, there was a time when paper money was thought of, looked at askance as well. This was when Jamie Dimon famously said he'd fire anyone. And when he said that, I understood that, because that's exactly how I felt if I popped my head up at Morgan Stanley at the time. And a lot of these banks have pushed out their crypto people, and now, ironically, they're scrambling to find them.
Absolutely. It is an exciting time that we're living through.
Yeah.
What's the one area people aren't talking about that you think they should be?
Well, this Wall Street,
the Wall Street stuff,
the Wall Street entry. This is a big deal, and it's clear that it's going to take a lot of patient education of folks to understand, both on the Wall Street side, why it is such a big deal. That you've got now the 10-ton gorilla of market infrastructure in the U.S. embracing natively digital assets. And I think the fixed income market is going to go in that direction pretty fast, because why would you bother to issue in paper form anymore, in global security form? It just, now that ICE is accepting natively digital assets, game changer for Wall Street. I think a lot of folks don't understand that. And then on the crypto side, it's, wait a minute, Wall Street really isn't your friend here. Yes, they're going to bring liquidity. Yes, they're going to bring institutional investors in, but they're also going to create Bitcoin substitutes off the chain. And it's not as though, the custodial exchanges, someone just today said, hey, Mt. Gox did that. Absolutely. We didn't own real Bitcoins if we owned Bitcoins at Mt. Gox. We owned an IOU from Mt. Gox. And a lot of folks didn't understand that. But I like to repeat what Charlie Shrem has said. You have to lose money in Bitcoin before you make it. And I lost some coins in Mt. Gox, because that was the place when I was buying that everybody bought, and I didn't fully understand that. But boy, that was really cheap tuition. It was money well spent. That loss to me was money well spent, because I learned that lesson. I didn't own real Bitcoin. And it wasn't until I pulled my private keys off, and i.e. pulled my Bitcoins off, that I understood that I finally owned real Bitcoin.
Absolutely. It's so funny, right? For somebody who learned about in 2012, got in 2013, 2014, right? For us to be sitting here, just a few years later, and to be reminding people that Wall Street's not your friend,
yeah,
right? That probably wasn't something you had to be saying in 2013,
no,
right? With the people around the table.
But it's so fascinating. The knee-jerk reaction was, oh my God, this is so positive. And yes, in some ways, but it's not universally positive. And I just want to be very patient and respectful, because a lot of really smart people just haven't gone down that other side's rabbit hole yet. And it's smart people on both sides. It's the Wall Street people saying, what? ICE is getting into Bitcoin? And it's the crypto people saying, what? We can have off-chain fractionally reserved Bitcoin substitutes? So it's time for a lot of folks to go down the other side's rabbit hole and really learn.
Well, and I think too, it's a technologist's view, right? Is it's math, right? And so you kind of look at the numbers that you've got there. When they get exposed to what is essentially financial engineering, right? It's something that they've just never thought about.
Absolutely.
And so it's this. You mean to tell me that people are actually going to buy a thing that represents Bitcoin, but they're not going to buy Bitcoin?
Well, and interestingly, when we start explaining that, and now the Twitter's gone absolutely nuts. People are talking to each other. A lot of folks really understand this and explain it and help explain it to peers. People are kind of, again, realizing, oh my God, you mean that's what Kraken and BitMEX and OKEX are doing? Yeah, they've been doing it all along. They're basically Web 2.0 companies that create a centralized application layer, and they record transactions to the underlying chain, but they're commingling the Bitcoins in an omnibus account. Anytime you use a custodial exchange or a custodian, or you store your coins at Coinbase or Circle or BitPay, guess what? You're doing, you have an IOU from them, unless you're in Coinbase Vault, and it's the same thing. And so a lot of folks didn't really realize that. I know Andreas has been trying to help people understand that. You don't own your private keys unless you don't own your Bitcoin unless you have your private keys. He can't repeat that often enough, is what I found, because even within the hardcore crypto community, there were a lot of folks who didn't understand that nuance. And so again, it's just patient, respectful education. And this ICE news definitely has caused a lot of folks to open up and learn.